Well, hello and welcome to the Bookvine's presentation for Supporting Professionals Network Association. We're so glad to be here. I'm Amy Vandement, president of the Bookvine for Children. I've been with the Bookvine for 22 years, and I've been a bookseller for 27 years with a focus on selecting books for early childhood. I have an art background, and I firmly believe that children's picture books are a marriage of art and text. And when these two components are at the same level, it creates a book that is unforgettable and worthy of being included in your classrooms or collections. And if you're not familiar with the Bookvine, we read the 3,000 new picture books published each year and select only the best, which is only about 10% of the titles that are published.
That's why Amy and I have very thick glasses because we read all 3,000 of them. I'm Isabelle Baker, founding director of the Bookvine for Children. And for 40 years, it's been my passion and my privilege to work with caregivers, teachers, and present the best of the new books each year. I have a master's degree in education and one in library science. We started this business, the Bookvine for Children, in Chicago 40 plus years ago, and we're still going strong, and we have not left the Chicagoland area.
So today we're going to talk about how caregivers can make story time the best part of the day with simple techniques to make your story time nurturing and an enriching experience for all. Isabelle, do you want to talk about the 3 disclaimers?
Of course, I love to disclaim. Do as I say, not as I do. We are going to read quickly because we want to show you a variety of books. But when you're reading to the children, slow it down. Don't take your time. Don't read quickly. Let them absorb it. We probably will interrupt once or twice just to point something out. But we highly recommend you don't do that when you're reading to children for the first couple of times you read a book. We think of them as a piece of art. Let them make it their own. Let them bring their own imaginations to the book before you start narrowing their imaginations by pointing certain things out. And it really reminds me, or reminds us of watching a movie with your significant other, and they interrupt you and they put it on pause to ask you a
Wait a
question.
minute. I've never experienced this. What are you talking about?
You know, when they say, what flavor ice cream should I get? That kind of thing. Do you want some popcorn? And it's so annoying. Well, maybe not for ice cream and popcorn. That was a bad example, but because there's always good reason to interrupt for that. But anyway, don't interrupt the first few times. Let them feel the whole drift of the book. And then we're going to shorten some books just because we want to show you a good variety. But pick books that are appropriate for the children in your group. And that's not easy for when you have multiple ages, but I know you're all pros at that and do a good job at that. So let each, pick age appropriate books. Okay.
On to the books.
On to the books. So first we want to show you Lucy Cousins' Nursery Rhymes. And this is obviously by Lucy Cousins. And nursery rhymes have such rich vocabulary. They're unusual words, and they don't take away from the enjoyment of the poem, even if you don't know what it means. Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet. Did you know what a tuffet was? Do you even know now what a tuffet is? And it doesn't make any difference. Or the itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. I remember loving that song and that rhyme. And I grew up in an apartment in Chicago, and I didn't know what a water spout was until I was well into adulthood. So probably last year. No, anyway, I do know what a water spout is now, but that doesn't matter. It's the rich vocabulary. So why have they sort of fallen out of favor? Well, we think it's because most of the books, the collections, are little Caucasian girls with blonde hair and curls and little bonnets on, and they're dated and don't speak to the illustrations, don't speak to the children or the adults, even though the rhymes still do. So here's an interior page. And here we have little Miss Muffet. Is she not wonderful? Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet, eating her curds and whey. I didn't know what a curds or a whey was. Doesn't matter. Along came a spider who sat down beside her and frightened poor Miss Muffet away. So that is just a wonderful little Miss Muffet. And I love how her hair is standing up because she's afraid.
Well, the
And
spider is as large as her head, so there's good reason she's afraid.
I guess good reason. And then there's Jack and Jill went up the hill. So here we have a more diverse Jill and Jack. So I like that. And I think that makes it contemporary and more appealing to the children. So don't forget Mother Goose. If children know Mother Goose rhymes and have them memorized by the time they start first grade, they will have an easier time learning how to read because they'll be able to predict. And besides, saying these rhymes together, like in your childcare settings, is wonderful. It's a way of connecting to the other children and to the adults, and it's a sense of community. Okay, the next one is Tummy Time Friends, and these are great board books, again, for the little ones. And some babies are smiling, some are crying, so it's social emotional too. And the accordions, this accordion fold is great for tummy time and crib time. And I think particularly good for you all because you have multi-ages. And look at that front one with the black and white photographs by Tana Hoban. I mean, that is really a beautiful book. As a 3-year-old would love that book and could share it with the babies. So great book. Another good board book is called My Family, Your Family by Katherine Cole and Cornelia Lee. And this book kind of has it all. We have, this is the cover, it's a board book. And here we have 2 dads, we have 2 moms, we have grandparents, we even have a little girl with a prosthetic, which Amy and I didn't notice after we had read it 20 times. Maybe one of us happened to notice it. Good books have many layers and you'll see something new each time. So don't, always look for the good, rich books. And then the inside of that book, here's one of the pages, all kinds of families. And here they are in the park. We particularly are drawn to the 2 children in the lower right-hand corner. What are they angry about? This would be great fun to talk to your children about and say, what are they angry about? You'll hear lots of good stories. And the next board book is My Hair is Beautiful. And we want to point out photography is a great art form. And children's books, you need a collection that has some illustrations, some photographs, and it enhances our general knowledge. Good photography exposes children to different foods, cultures, ways of dress, neighborhoods. It expands their general knowledge, and this is a good thing. And look at that interior page. My hair is natural knotty with the 2 little teeth. I love those. And fluffy frizzy. So beautiful board book. And then the last board book for the young is Pat a Cake. So a first book of nursery rhymes. And this one's illustrated. And again, Amy and I didn't notice this until I don't know how many times we read it, Amy. The girl with the hearing aid.
Probably about 6 times.
Yeah. So this again are traditional nursery rhymes. So here's another wonderful little Miss Muffet. She's adorable. I love the way she's looking at the spider. And these diverse illustrations only enhance the rhymes instead of dating them like the older books.
Again, another outsized spider.
Well, you have to make the point,
He's as big as her tuffet.
That's true. It's true. Oh my gosh. Very good. So So don't forget the board books for the very young, but we think all of these will be also interesting to your little older children. We know we're speaking to people, to teachers and caregivers who have multiple ages in their homes.
This
Okay.
board book also has the hand motions
Ah,
to go
yes,
along with the rhymes, which is especially useful if you're unfamiliar. Then you can do them with the children and learn them along as you recite them.
yes, that's a good point. I want to forget that. Okay. Now we're going to move on to some hardcover books. And so these are books for more for the 3 to 5-year-olds or 6-year-olds.
And so this is Goodnight Veggies by Diana Murray and Zachariah O'Hora. This title is perfect for this time of year because I'm sure that many of you are doing activities such as planting and growing with young children. And this book looks simple, but there are many, many layers at play here. Sunset in the garden. Robins in their nest. You can see there on the rooftop garden, there's a worm wiggling his way over to the planter. You can see him, he's wearing a black cap and one black tennis shoe. Tossing, turning veggies need to get some rest. Turnips tucked in tightly, potatoes closing eyes. Tuckered out tomatoes, humming lullabies. Cuddly cauliflowers, droopy pods of peas. Rhubarbs reading stories to worn out broccolis. Baby carrots snuggling, baby lettuce too. Baby eggplants dreaming of places far and new. Cucumbers are calm, lined up nice and neat. Golden yams are still, and beets are simply beet. Cabbages are nodding their leafy, sleepy heads. Radishes are dozing in cozy garden beds. Celery is snoring as sunset disappears. Cranky corn rolls over and covers up its ears. Every veggie snoozing beneath the moon so bright. For nothing's more exhausting than growing day and night. And there's our friend Worm asleep in his nice long bed, his nightcap. Good night, sleepy veggies. Sleep tight. Well, this is obviously a STEAM title, but there's more here. There's great vocabulary and what's happening beneath the soil. It's a fascinating look at so much going on with roots. And in addition to crops growing beneath the soil, it's crops growing above the soil too, like one of my favorites, tops and bottoms. And that worm that I pointed out, he's a great character to lead you through this rooftop garden. There's the humor of the wordplay and how to break down those puns. There's really a lot to learn. And at this point, it's worth mentioning that most authors never meet the illustrator. It's the illustrator that's selected by the editor. And in the case of this particular book, we don't know if the worm was part of the manuscript or an invention or addition of the illustrator. And it's the union of these two strangers, the illustrator and the author, that often takes a children's picture book to the next level. And sometimes that level is magical, like this book.
It is. The more I read this book, the more I love it. The vocabulary that you mentioned, the alliteration, which is a good pre-reading skill, is amazing. Cuddly cauliflower, snoring celery, and it's not even the same letter. Beet. I just think it's very clever. Cranky corn, rhubarb reading. I mean, really very, very good. I also wanted to mention personally, since I already mentioned growing up in Chicago in an apartment, that I had no idea the role that earthworms play for gardens and how important they are to keep the soil loose and able to thrive. And here, I don't think a lot of city kids know that. So this is a real worm appreciation book. Yeah.
I like that. I think that's our The worm appreciation book.
Absolutely. And children like to play with worms. And I think if you appreciate them, you'll be a little more,
Respectful.
yes, exactly. So, well, the next thing are some book lady tips. We're your book ladies. So we hear a lot of concern, and I think, boy, I can't even imagine in your situation where you have multiple ages, a, a concern about the way children take care of books, that they're hard on them. And yes, the hardcovers may last longer, but the children are harder on them. But then the paperbacks get ripped up too easily. And we imagine it's very challenging for you, especially with limited resources. So we developed these book lady tips for teachers and caregivers, and we're just going to show you a few. But this will be a handout that you can print out yourselves later. So when I was a librarian, I like to tell the children, well, first let's start, where do books belong? I would tell them, books are fragile. Water warps their pages, coloring on them ruins the story for the next reader. Where can books go without getting hurt? So in your settings, the children can look around and find a good place where they can go. How do we handle a book? Do we step on them? The children go, no. Do we hold them in our hands and laps? Yes. Do we hold one cover and let the other one and all the pages hang down like this?
Oh no, she's doing it.
No. Picking up a book is a two-handed job.
Especially if you have little hands.
Yes, so true. So true. So making the comparison with children that books are our friends, I always found particularly helpful. Ask children, how do we treat our friends? Are we gentle or rough? What do we do when a friend is hurt? Would we draw on our friends? Would we want to put them on the floor and step on them? Oh, no, of course not. Books need the same care. And you might point out that books are our friends, but books are made of paper and are even more fragile. And then turning the page. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, but learning to turn a page without hurting the book is not magic. It just takes practice. And instead of using their hands to put, you all know, I'm not going to do it
with their whole hand.
Yes. I'm sure they see it all the time.
Right.
And, the adults are going,
yeah, jelly covered fingers moving across a page.
Exactly. Now probably it's hand sanitized and going across the page until it bunches up. Let children know that page turning is an activity for an index finger, not the whole hand. And happy ending. When they're finished with the book, children should close the cover and put the book back on the shelf with the spine out. It should go right alongside the other books. And in our tips, there's a whole section on, talking about the spine is like your spine, the spine of the book. It holds you together just like it holds the book together. Okay.
All right. Moving right along with more books, this is Dozens of Donuts by Carrie Finnison, illustrated by Brianne Farley. And this book has some really wonderful end papers. And Isabelle, do you want to hold up a copy of a book to show what the end papers are? I don't have one at my fingertips.
Okay, well, I'm going to show this book later, but here's the end papers. It's attached to the cover of the book. So these donuts are attached to the cover.
That's right. And these donuts, you won't see another one. They're not duplicated. And they're our favorite end papers, I think, because who can resist a donut? And you'll have to wait to the end of the book to see how the end papers change. Frequently, they're sort of a foreshadowing into the title. Sometimes they're plain, but in this case, it is beautifully illustrated. Early one morning as autumn leaves scatter, Luann's busy stirring a big bowl of batter. She'll eat some sweet treats, then warm and well fed, she'll sleep away winter tucked tight in her bed. 1 dozen donuts hot from the pan, toasty and tasty, and all for ding dong. Woodrow, do you have enough for a neighbor to share? Sure, says Luann, and she pulls up a chair. 1 dozen donuts hot from the pan. Half are for Woodrow, and the rest are for ding dong. Clyde? Luann, feeling generous, offers a plateful. Donuts, my favorite, says Clyde. I'm so grateful. You're welcome. Dig in. I'll make more, says Luann. She measures and mixes as fast as she can. 1 dozen donuts hot from the pan, a few for her friends, and the rest for ding dong. Topsy? So I think you can see what's coming. So Topsy is next. 1 dozen donuts hot from the pan, some for each friend, and the rest for ding dong. And you can see how the donuts are being divided up among all of her friends. So each friend gets 1 donut less with each new visitor. And then Roufrette. We do love these names. And finally, Chip and Chomp arrive. Oh no, the donuts are going. Well, Luann has had enough, and like a bear, she roars, and they all run out. Only to find out that her friends got together to make things right. Peeking outside, Luann blinks in surprise. Her friends have come back, and they've all brought supplies. We counted the donuts you made us, so many, and that's when we noticed you didn't get any. We're sorry, Luann. But her friends have made more than enough for 1 bear. She has plenty to eat, and she's happy to share. And so now you see that the end papers, the wreckage that the animals, they've eaten all of the donuts. And as Isabelle points out, that she likes the old-fashioned
That's
donut
my favorite
the
one.
best. And that's her little raccoon hand reaching in for the old-fashioned.
I know. It's just ironic when I first read the book. I thought, that is my favorite donut, and it's left. I was so happy.
There, the old-fashioned donut is even good stale, I have to say, because it doesn't have icing, to get funny or weep. So the poetry of this book is really seamless, and it moves the story along. There are so many math opportunities here. It's social emotional. It's talking about elements of nature and hibernation. It's not a one-dimensional math book by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, it's really pretty sophisticated for a
It is.
math book. And how much fun it would be to, of course, divide donuts up or other foods, pizza, whatever.
Right. Apple slices if you want to deviate from the fun donut.
If you want to be healthier.
Right. All right. Now we have Old Rock is Not Boring by Deb Paludi. Old Rock has been sitting in the same spot at the edge of a clearing in the middle of a pine forest for as long as anyone could remember. And even before that. Being a rock seems awfully boring, said Tall Pine. You sit in the same spot day after day, said Spotted Beetle. Well, it's a very nice spot, said Old Rock. But don't you want to go anywhere? Asked Hummingbird. Well, I've flown all over the world and sipped nectar of exotic flowers. I would surely be bored if I could not fly. Well, I flew once, said Old Rock. Gosh, said Tall Pine. How? Asked Spotted Beetle. Rocks don't fly, said Hummingbird. And Old Rock told him about the time in the beginning when darkness was all around. And then I erupted out of a volcano and soared through a fiery sky into the bright light of a new world. We just love the look on that rock's face as he's flying through the air.
And children do too. That's
yes. Your granddaughter loves this book.
She does.
So it was just the one time, said Hummingbird. And now you're sitting here, said Tall Pine. Being bored, said Spotted Beetle. I'm not bored, said Old Rock. Don't you want to see more? Asked Spotted Beetle. If I climbed to the tip-top branch of tall pine, I might see a deer mouse nibbling seeds in a nearby tree, or watch ships sailing across the big lake. Old Rock said, I have seen a lot. And then Old Rock told them about the time a group of friendly-looking dinosaurs lumbered by, munching every leaf in sight. And then many years later, a not-so-friendly dinosaur came looking for a meal. No, I haven't seen her. So Old Rock is protecting a tiny dinosaur behind him from a big dinosaur who's hungry. Time passed, things changed, and the world chilled. Which wasn't too bad because Old Rock took a ride in a glacier and toured the land. You can see him there inside the glacier. Once the glacier melted, it left me perched at the top of a ridge, and I could see the place where the sky touches the earth. My, you have seen a lot, said Spotted Beetle. How unusual, said Hummingbird. Yes, but that was ages ago, said Tall Pine. Aren't you bored now? Don't you want to move? My limbs flutter gently in a breeze and dance wildly when the wind blows. Well, I've never danced, but I'm pretty good at doing somersaults. And Old Rock revealed that after teetering on the ridge for a while, the ground rumbled and tumbled and stumbled down, down, down into a valley. Grasses grew, mastodons roamed, and lakes formed. I never knew a rock had moves like that, said Tall Pine. I wish I could have seen those things, said Spotted Beetle. Well, what happened next? Asked Hummingbird. And then Old Rock describes his friends and how he met them. It is a very nice spot, said Old Rock. Yes, it is, agreed Tall Pine. Very nice, said Spotted Beetle. Not boring at all, said Hummingbird. So we love the message. Don't assume about someone else's life experience. But this book is also so much fun and so surprising. It's science and it's social emotional and it's multi-generational because after all, that rock is old. And here's the back matter. And you might say, well, what is back matter? Well, back matter is the section at the back of the book that's supplementary in nature. And it informs the reader, which is the adult generally, or a teacher, about some aspects of the book. Really, it helps the teacher with more information about the book's subject. And sometimes it includes an activity, sometimes a recipe. The author, Deb Paludi, interviewed several scientists to make sure this book is accurate. She interviewed a geologist, an evolutionary biologist, and a paleobotanist. And if you take a closer look, you'll see that Old Rock's story follows the geological timeline. So it's STEAM or science that covers a lot of ground, different organisms, periods of time, and as we said, social emotional.
You know, Amy, every time we look at that page, I look at the 11,000 years ago to see that mastodon stopping for a rest.
Mhm.
Poor Old Rock.
I know. He has seen a lot.
Ooh, we're getting down there. Okay. Let me go to shapes. Okay. The next book is another nonfiction book that you could say was STEAM, and it's called Shapes. It's by Shelley Rotner and Anne Woodhall, and the photographs are by Shelley Rotner. And we're not going to show you the whole book, but the photographs in this are just wonderful. We were very happy to see it. So here's a sampling. Circles float, and then there's a page turn. Polka dots, peas, a ball, owl eyes, lollipops and clocks, marbles, the moon, and sun. Squares build. Chocolate, checkers, chess, ice cubes, puzzles, and presents. Hopscotch. So stop on this page for a second. The photographs, again, are wonderful. And this is something that we look for in all nonfiction books. And Amy refers to this as diversity depiction. So here you have 3 children from 3 different racial backgrounds. And this book has nothing to do with culture or race. And but that's what our world looks like. And we want everyone to feel like they're part of our world by reading a book. So, and look at that child with the present, and he's smiling, and the Rubik's Cube, they're all smiling. It's wonderful. So, and especially in the nonfiction, look for books that have children, a multitude of different kinds of children. Ovals. We put this in because this is the hardest shape to get to explain to children, we think. Ovals pop, then the page turn, eggs, grapes, lemons, leaves, jelly beans, seeds, sunglasses, and a spoon. And it's funny, we've looked at this book many times and we never tire of the photographs. They're interesting, they're not dull. And the cereal one makes us laugh every time because when we looked at it, now both of us only saw the shape of the spoon. It's an oval, but indeed the cereal is also an oval shape. What kind of cereal is that, Amy? Do you know?
It looks like puffed
rice, maybe?
Puffed rice, I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Just, it's wonderful. And then I had to show you this last picture because it's so beautiful. Stars Bloom. I just thought that picture was lovely. So Amy and I think that this is the new go-to book on the subject of shapes. The photographs are wonderful. The page turns in this book build anticipation. You sort of look forward to what is it going to be next. There's racial diversity, representative of our cities and our country. And this is all done in the hands of a pro. Shelley Rotner was a photographer first. She worked at the UN as a photo researcher, and she traveled all over the world for UNICEF. And she only thought of doing children's books after she had children of her own. She's now up to about 50 books, so she's quite prolific. And a fun fact that I read about her is that when she was in kindergarten, so she was 5 years old, she was very insulted that she should be in the lowest grade, kindergarten, because she was so mature. So every time the teacher would turn her back, she would scoot across the hall and go into the first grade. And you know what they did by the, middle of the year? They moved Shelley Rotner to the first grade. They kept her. They followed her lead.
Her plan worked.
Her plan worked. The next one is Saturday, a new book by Oge Mora. She won a Caldecott honor for her book, Thank You, Amu. Her artwork, she did both the text and the illustration. This morning, Ava and her mother were all smiles. It was Saturday because Ava's mother worked Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Friday. Saturday was the day they cherished. On Saturdays, they zipped to the library for weekly story time. On Saturdays, they lounged in salon chairs and got new hairdos. On Saturdays, they picnicked in the grass for a peaceful afternoon in the park. And on this Saturday, they would also ride the bus across town for a one-night only puppet show. The day would be special. The day would be splendid. The day was Saturday. Ava and her mother could hardly wait. So zoom off they went. But when they reached the library, story time was canceled. Oh no, Ava cried, it's canceled, wailed Ava's mother. They paused, they closed their eyes and let out a deep breath. Don't worry, Ava, her mother reassured her. Today will be special. Today will be splendid. Today is Saturday. So zoom off they went. But as they left the salon, whoosh, oh no, Ava sobbed. Our dues, boo-hooed Ava's mother. They paused, closed their eyes, and let out a deep breath. Don't worry, Ava, her mother reassured her. Today will be special. Today will be splendid. Today is Saturday. So zoom, off they went. But their peaceful afternoon in the park was loud. Oh no, Ava groaned. What did you say? It's too noisy, yelled her mother. They paused, they closed their eyes and let out a deep breath. Don't worry, Ava, her mother reassured her. Today will be special. Today will be splendid. Today will be ruined if we miss that bus. So zoom to the extra special one night only puppet show. We made it, Ava exclaimed as they arrived at the theater. Thank goodness, Ava's mother sighed in relief. Hooray for Saturday, they cheered. Tickets, chirped the lady at the door. Ava's mother reached into her purse, but the tickets were not there. Oh no, Ava's mother gasped. I left our tickets on the table. As Ava watched, her mother crumpled. I've had it. Story time was canceled. Our hair was ruined. The park was loud. And now we're missing the puppet show. I am so sorry, Ava. We looked forward to this all week and I've messed everything up. I've ruined Saturday. Ava was quiet for a moment. Then she closed her eyes, let out a deep breath. Don't worry, Mommy, Ava reassured her. Today was special. Today was splendid. Saturdays are wonderful because I spend them with you. Touches my heart every time. So slowly, hand in hand, off they went. And when they reached their apartment door, Ava turned to her mother. She had an idea. What if we, Ava started, and you know we could, her mother began. What a beautiful day. So it's a lovely story that will resonate with parents for sure, caregivers too, and children. There are many possibilities for discussion afterwards. What do you like to do with a parent or a grandparent? Can you think about a disappointment that you've had regarding an activity? How did you regroup? It's a great discussion starter on resilience. And Olga's art style is collage. She never throws anything away. She rips up paper, and that's how she makes her art. And collage is another wonderful project for home or school. It's recycling at its best.
I love how grateful Ava was. You know, well-adjusted, a well-adjusted child.
Very.
A good example for everybody.
Yes, she has a good mom. It's great.
And now we have Federico and the Wolf, written by Rebecca J. Gomez and illustrated by Elisa Chavari. And I had to include these end papers because they're so joyful. They're like ceramic tiles. And here we have the title page, a little bit of foreshadowing as to what might be happening in our story. Once upon a modern time, a boy named Federico left to buy ingredients to make the perfect pico. Cuidado, called his mama as he pedaled toward the shops. Mind Abuelo's grocery list and don't make other stops. Past the buildings, cars, and cabs, young Federico scurried until he reached the marketplace where people browsed unhurried. He filled the basket on his bike with Roma's herbs and limes, jalapenos, onions, and a pack of Anaheims. He added garlic, pickles, bread, and other market goods, then pedaled through the city park and deep into the woods. A fallen branch had blocked the path, so Rico stopped his ride. With steady force, he pushed and budged the barrier aside. Hola, called on Lobo, watching Rico unaware. I see you've packed a hefty lunch. You got some grub to spare? Sorry, Lobo, Rico said. I must be on my way. I have to be at Grandpa's shop by 12 o'clock today. Federico grabbed his bike and left the wolf behind. Little did he know the wolf had other plans in mind.
Love that wolf, that
I,
illustration.
I do too. He really looks like he's plotting.
Yeah.
La tienda was deserted. Rico listened, not a sound. The sign said closed. And what were those? Some paw prints on the ground? Federico peeked inside, alarmed by what he saw. A figure waved him over with a large and furry paw. Abuelo? Whispered Federico, pulling off his hood. Yes, it's me, but I can't see. Come closer if you would. I think you need a shave. Your beard has grown so thick. You think so? Said El Lobo. Steady grooming does the trick. Your arms have gotten grande. My new workouts made me strong. New dentures chew. They help me chew because they're sharp and long. By now the wolf was drooling. Oh, this chatter's getting old. I'm hungry, bub. I need some grub before I pass out cold. Okay, said Rico, let me see. I brought your favorite treats, whole grain bread, a cabbage head, a jar of pickled beets. El Lobo's nose began to twitch. Mi niño, here's the deal. Set those yucky things aside and I'll make you my meal. He bounded from Lacio with a grunting, growling shout, but Rico tossed some chili powder straight into his snout. The wolf inhaled, he sniffed, he snuffed, he itched and twitched and wheezed. He tried to wipe his drippy nose, but sneezed. Federico dashed and ducked, whoop, through his sack. Not so fast, you tasty tyke. I haven't had my snack. But Rico quickly plotted. When the wolf's mouth opened wide, he grabbed on habanero and jammed it deep inside. El Lobo gulped, he gagged and coughed. His ojos blazed bright red. Steam was puffing out his ears. I need to dunk my head. He hurtled through La Puerta with a shrieking, gasping scream and dashed as fast as he could go toward the distant stream. Ayuda, cried Abuelo from inside a bolted box. Rico found him safe and snug in just his shorts and socks. Gracias, he scrambled out with shouts of pride and joy. I thought that wolf would do us in, but you prevailed, my boy. They cleaned the mess and Gramps got dressed. They shared a bit of lunch. How about we make a special sauce that packs a mighty punch? They chopped and diced, used lots of spice, and simmered sauce all night. Then they bottled their concoction, Wolf's Bane salsa, extra bite. Well, I love this book because it's about a grandfather and a grandson. And of course, it's a takeoff on Little Red Riding Hood. In the back, you have a recipe for the perfect pico, and you have Spanish words and phrases that are phonetically spelled out. The rhyme, it keeps the story moving. I've read it a number of times, and if you read it, you'll find that you'll make your way through it quite easily. I got it tongue-tied a couple of times, but it's a great, fun read, and it's definitely problem-solving and relationship skills.
And the cleverness of this child, it just makes you, it boosts confidence for sure.
It really does. And you use your noodle. That's what all those tales are about.
Yeah.
And the beautiful end papers. And now we have The Altogether Quilt by Lizzie Rockwell. And again, the end papers lead us into the book, and they give us an idea of what the book might be about. And here's the title page with all the tools that they'll use to make their quilt. Jennifer and her friends meet on Fridays at the community center. They're making a quilt. Everyone works together. First, Jennifer picks a fabric from the dark colors, and Fran picks a fabric from the light colors. Jennifer traces a shape on the dark fabric, and then she traces a shape on the light fabric. Fran cuts out 2 shapes. Jennifer pins them together. Fran sews them together. Richard and Maurice work together. They trace and cut and pin and sew. Look, 2 triangles together make 1 square, and 2 rectangles together make 1 square. And then you have the names of the pairs and their quilt squares. And you can see they're all different. Together in pairs, they make 8 squares, except for Nika. Nika works on 1 blue square. She uses special pens and paints and brushes. Next, they arrange the squares. They turn them and they move them this way and that. The last one they try is their favorite. This quilt will have a border around 4 sides. Jocelyn measures and Anime cuts 4 white rectangles. The pieces look plain, but not for long. Anna helps Jennifer cover the palm of her hand with paint. Jennifer presses her hand onto the fabric. Friends are invited to make handprints too. Now all the pieces are ready, and labels show where the pieces are located. They pin and sew and iron all the pieces together. Soon, the patchwork is complete. Now it's time to layer the quilt, and it goes through all the steps that are required to put the quilt together, the quilting frame. And at the frame, Santa learns to stitch. She pokes the needle down from the top and back up from below. It's hard to find the right spot, but she practices and learns. It takes a long time to quilt the quilt. Everybody lends a hand. On many, many Fridays, they sit and stitch and talk together. And this is one of my favorite illustrations out of the book because it shows the diverse people in the neighborhood together and different ages. It's multi-generational. Finally, the last stitch is stitched. The quilt is taken off the frame. It's trimmed into a neat square, and Dot sews on a purple binding to close the edges. Many hands work together to make this beautiful quilt. But who will have it now that it's done? Everyone will have it. It hangs in the library for all to see. It's the quilt that Jennifer and her friends made all together. So here's the back matter, different kinds of quilt blocks and their names. And this book is a natural for extensions. First of all, it's math and geometric shapes, but also patterns and sequencing, use of gross motor skills, and you could make a paper classroom quilt or even a quilt between different caregivers. Children could make different forms to put quilt blocks together. And so there's a lot of learning in this book. It's diversity depiction that we talked about earlier, multi-generational, and it's about collaboration and community.
You know, what I just thought of too, the Quilts of Gee's Bend, that cooperative down in, is it in Georgia or Alabama, I
I
think?
think it's the Carolinas, maybe? I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I'm not sure. It's somewhere in the South where they use old clothes to make these fabulous quilts. Well, that would be something too, if clothes are so worn out that they really can't be handed down anymore. That would be fun to cut up fabric and have the children play with that and make different patterns too. So just a thought. Okay, our next book is Here It's a Family Affair by Milo Freeman. And we don't have a picture on the screen of the end papers, but I wanted to show them to you because they are just so much fun and interesting. So I hope you can see this.
Lots of different hairstyles.
Yes. And it's just fun to look at each one of them. Okay. Quiet, children, Miss Brown, the teacher, claps her hands. It's Macy's turn to tell us about her family. Macy's eyes light up. I'm going to tell you about my family's hair. When Grandma was young, she had a big afro like a ball of cotton candy, says Macy. She looked really amazing. Her afro is smaller now, but she still looks amazing. My big sister and her friends have different hairstyles, cornrows, locks, and an afro. They think they look really cool, Macy chuckles. My mom has promised my little brother a cute haircut. I hope he can keep still, says Macy. I love combing my baby sister's hair, Macy smiles. She has the softest, sweetest smelling hair, and I'm the only one she lets brush it. My mom says that hair is a family affair, and helping each other saves a lot of time too. I love my big cousin Kiki. One week her hair is purple and the next it is bright pink. She has so much style, Macy sighs. I want to look like her when I grow up. And when I grow up, I'm going to be a famous doctor, and my best friend Troy will be a famous hairdresser. Well, now I've talked about everyone in my family and their hair, except for one person. Macy pauses. And that's my dad, because he has no hair at all. Macy chuckles, but we love him anyway. Good kid, huh?
Yeah.
All the children in the classroom clap and cheer. Well done, Macy. That was lovely, says Miss Brown. So that is just an upbeat, interesting book for anyone. Can't imagine. And, you know, lots of extensions, but lots of extensions for the book to talk about everyone's different family affairs, what they do. And the next book is Mayhem at the Museum. And this is written and illustrated by Luciano Lozano. It's not exactly written because it is a wordless book. And the cover of the book is a takeoff of Auguste Renoir's Two Girls at the Piano. It gives you a foreshadowing of what is to come. And it, as I said, it is a wordless book, but I wanted to show you the end papers. Again, these are what's glued down. Most books is just solid and there's no illustration, but you do get the feeling, oh, maybe I'm entering a museum. Not that anyone's been to a museum for the last year, but hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon.
You're right, exactly. So here we have a little girl who's walking up the steps of a very imposing art museum. I think this is supposed to be the Metropolitan Museum in New York, but it reminds me of the Art Institute a little bit too, and some other museums in Chicago. How about Natural History? They have wonderful stairways. And since it's wordless, I am just going to read the story, just tell you what I see. So we have a group of school children with the teacher behind, and we have a guard, and she's standing in front of the sign that says, "No touching the art." And it's a typical, whoops, I'm on the wrong one, sorry. And here we have the teacher showing a piece of art to the children, but our little girl, the one we saw at the very beginning, she's on to the next page. Next picture. And look what happens. The little girl leans out of the picture, the piano player, and she smiles at the little girl. So now the fun begins. And they're on to the next picture, and this is Vincent van Gogh's self-portrait. And now we're on to the next one. Vincent van Gogh gave his hat to the little girl. And now we're looking at a woman seated beside a vase of flowers by Edgar Degas. And the woman in the picture hands the little girl, who's now wearing the hat, a flower as well. And then we have the vase of flowers, Claude Monet's Sunflowers. And next picture is Paul Cézanne's Apples. And look what happens. The flowers are now in the hands of one of the children, and the apples have all fallen out of the picture, and the children are picking them up and eating them. So there's juggling fruit, there's knights with helmets, and everyone is starting to get in on the act. They're leaping. I love the way the sculpture is winking at the children and at the patrons. And then in the next one, we have Edgar Degas' Little Dancer of 14 Years. This sculpture originally was made many, many years ago, century ago, out of wax. But after Degas' death, 28 more of these sculptures were made of various sizes, but all in bronze. And one of them is actually at the Art Institute in Chicago. But now we see a lot of mayhem at the museum. They're all having fun and they're leaping, and the children even inspired the sculpture to dance and leap. But now they're all settling back down and they're getting ready to leave. And the teacher once again has control. And now the sign says, no touching the art, another one, and the guard is there. But when they leave, the sign says, the art touches you. And the little girl is winking at the guard, and the guard is winking back at the little girl. And we think this is a wonderful book, and you can find pictures. I know different art museums in Chicago will even lend you, educators will, and the library will lend you packets of pictures that you can look at with the children. So it's a great book to extend as well. And one more thing I'm going to say about the books before we go to the read aloud tips is that these books are to be enjoyed. Once you share it with the children, try to resist putting it high up on a shelf. Try to leave the books low. I know it's a little testy because of books getting ripped, but they can't learn to love a book that's high up on a shelf. They have to hold it, just like a teddy bear. They have to hold it. They have to smell it. They have to love it. And that's why they need to be surrounded by good books. Okay. Read aloud tips. We're going to end with that. And let's get our tips out. Okay. First tip, establish a reading routine. Make sure you read probably at least 2 times a day to the group if possible. Now there'll be many other times when little ones are napping, you might read to the older ones, but they need to expect it, just like breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Another thing to remember is to choose stories you like. If you love the book and you love the message and the art, when you read it to children, they're going to feel your passion and your enthusiasm for the book. You can't mistake that kind of thing. So it's going to make your life easier if you have books in your home daycare setting or home-based childcare setting that you love and treasure, and it's going to make the day go faster. Story time is going to be smoother and more enjoyable for everyone. And also remember that when you have books, let's say you get a few new books, to read those books to yourself out loud before you read them to the children. There have been lots of cases where a caregiver or a teacher will just pick up a book and think, oh, I can read this book to the children. But suddenly you're faced with text that is maybe too sophisticated for the group you're reading to, or there's a plot twist or a surprise in the book that you weren't anticipating, which makes a very uncomfortable story time for everyone. So read ahead, read aloud to yourself, and make sure that you're comfortable with the content and the phrasing.
Absolutely. And Amy said, choose stories you like. That is essential. And, you know, I'm wondering if a lot of your children bring books from home into your home. And that's always fraught because you might not enjoy the book and then you feel forced to have to read it. So better that you should have a little fund or something that the parents can contribute to, where you can choose books that you love that are not duplicates of what you already have. But when you read to a child, you are giving them a gift. That's the way I look at it. And you don't just pull anything off the shelf. You think about it. You want to be thoughtful and give them something that you like whenever you give a gift. So again, okay. Choose stories with bold pictures. For the younger the child, the more bold and simple the picture. Details are fine for a little older child that can take it all in. And I always say sit like this picture here of the adult sitting on a little stool. In a home, it's a little bit different. They might be sitting on the couch with you, but I know in school settings, I never like to see the teacher on the floor with the children. It's hard for the children to see. I think you should feel somewhat regal that you are sharing this book with the children. It adds a specialness to the whole event.
So we also like to talk about how to hold a book for story time. If you have children that are obviously in front of you, you're going to hold the book like this in your non-dominant hand and turn the pages like this and read from the book this way. That way the children have something to focus on and you're not flipping the book back and forth with a lot of movement. So you're just turning the pages and reading the text. So it gives them something constant to focus on.
Absolutely. Another thing is we see some read aloud adults are fabulous at dramatizing a book. We don't think it's necessary for everyone to do that. You have to find your own comfortable space in that, because I think some teachers and some adults are shy to read aloud because they don't feel they're as dramatic. It goes back to the key is that if you love the book, you will want to share that passion for the book.
Also, if it's a good story, you don't have to be dramatic. You can use inflection, but it's not necessary.
Right. You don't want to just be monotone. You do want some inflection, right? And avoid gimmicks. The book will speak for itself if it's a good book. And most importantly, have fun. Story time should be pleasurable for you and for the children.
Absolutely. All right. Oops. So, like we said, don't forget to select titles you love and bring your own joy to story time.
And don't forget to look for books that have what Amy refers to as diversity depiction, but really something that's representative of the children in your group. You want everyone to see themselves in a book. It's very affirming.
Be sure to have a well-rounded assortment to reflect a variety of subject areas. So science, nature, social emotional titles. You have a wide variety.
Absolutely. And so sometimes the child that is not sitting with you to read, doesn't seem interested. Maybe you have to figure out what they're interested in and make sure you find some good books in that area. And reading with children is an act of nurturing. It's much more an act of nurturing than an act of teaching. And when we make it too much teaching, we kind of lose the soul of the whole experience. So nurture away, enjoy the books and story time.
And so we want to thank you, Deb Hampton, and the Supporting Professionals Networking Association.
And anytime you all need any help with children's book needs, we are here for you. We're an 800 telephone number away. We've been in the Chicagoland area. Our warehouse now is out a ways, but we're available online or by phone anytime.
Absolutely.
So, thank you. Thank you, Deborah Hampton, for bringing us to this.
We hope you enjoyed the books. And until next time, this is Amy
and Isabelle
from the Book Vine for Children.